Good evening, producer Susan.
Good evening, Jersey Joe. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fun. We're waiting, still waiting for our first flake of snow of the winter. We say we may get some. We haven't had a single flake of snow in New Jersey all year yet, so we might get
It's
some tomorrow night.
anticipated to start here at 4 a.m. We're
It
getting about
started. Started today.
no, we're starting tonight at 4 a.m. About 6 inches we're supposed to get.
Okay. All right. Well, you ready to rock and roll? We got a bunch of stuff. For this 30, you know how long it takes me to prepare for this 30-minute podcast?
2 hours.
Exactly 2 hours. And my and so here's what we're going to talk about today. Let me know if you think if we got enough stuff here to fill 30 minutes. If not, I've got about 6 or 7 items didn't make the cut, but we're going to try to go a little bit lighter today. Our quote of the day will be by George Washington on keeping bad company. We're going to talk about how many people know how to correctly spell the name of Australia's national airline. We're going to talk about a woman who objects to all of the cows' names on a yogurt container being female. We're going to talk about a college senior who, because he never did the reading he was supposed to do, why it cost him $1 million because he didn't do the reading he was supposed to do. And in our science minute, we'll talk about a school in Massachusetts that has 7,000 lights and they haven't been able to turn them off in 2 years. How'd you like to be the principal at school? You got 7,000 lights and for 2 years you haven't been able to turn a single one off.
Wouldn't want to pay that electric bill.
There's a new emotionally charged term I heard the other day called traffic violence. Have you ever heard the term traffic violence?
No, I haven't heard that.
Well, we're going to talk about the new term traffic violence. And in our health minutes, we'll talk about the benefits of vitamins E and D and the consequences of not having enough of them in your diet. Shock, there's corruption in the New York City construction industry. Were you as shocked as I was to hear about that?
Shocking.
So we'll talk about the latest corruption. French citizens are rioting all over France, and we're going to talk about why they're rioting. And it's really a cautionary tale about electing politicians based on the promises they make, but they haven't figured out how to pay for. In our taxpayer relief shot, it comes from us from Indianapolis, where a resident shoots and kills an armed intruder who broke into his house at 4 o'clock in the morning. You think we can fill the 30 minutes?
You could probably fill the 2 hours that it took you to prepare.
Right. So first of all, have you ever been to Australia?
Yes, I have. Beautiful country.
Well, so have I, as a matter of fact. What airline did you fly?
Qantas Airlines.
Do you know how to spell Qantas?
Yes, I do.
Because by
would
the
you
way,
like me to spell it?
99% of the people you ask will spell it. The first two letters will be QU. How do you spell Qantas?
It's QA. It's the only word that I'm aware of that does not have a U immediately following the Q.
Right. So the proper spelling is QANTAS. And it's actually not a word, it's an acronym. You know what it stands for?
No, I don't know what it stands for.
It's an acronym because when it first got started, it was the Queensland and Northern Territories Air Service, Qantas. So if you're ever at a bar or you want to win a bet around the dinner table, just ask somebody how to spell Qantas. And it's QANTAS. It stands for the Queensland and Northern Territories Air Service. So did you learn something new today?
I did.
All right. Let's move on to our next lighthearted story. And I've got an audio clip to go with this one, which I'm going to play for you. Have you ever heard the term Achilles tendon?
Yes.
Have you ever heard an expression, well, that was his Achilles heel?
Mm-hmm. Painful.
Well, Achilles heel, it generally refers to a weakness, somebody's weakness. So do you know who Achilles was?
I'm only aware that he's a Greek god.
Well, he was a mythological character. He had a human mother and his father was a god, and he was born. His mother wanted to make him immortal, so she held him by the foot and dipped him into the river Styx to make him immortal. Unfortunately, because his heel never got wet, that was his one mortal thing, and that made him weak, and he was eventually killed by a poison. He was a prime character, I think, in the Iliad. in the Trojan Wars. He was one of the main protagonists in the movie The Iliad. Anyway, anybody who had Greek mythology in high school or first year, certainly by college, that's the Iliad is kind of a kind of a core reading thing. Anyway, on the Wheel of Fortune, they had college week and they had 3 college seniors. And there's a college senior, and it's about a 90-second clip. And he's got the wheel. And by the way, there's, I think there's like 40 different little spots on the wheel. And one spot has a thing on it says $1 million. And what that is if you get the spot and solve the problem, if you get that, if the wheel stops in the $1 million spot on the wheel and you win and you solve the puzzle, you win $1 million. Well, I want you to listen to this guy. I'm going to play the whole 9 seconds. By the way, it's a very simple. It's he starts to complete. It's mythological hero Achilles. That's the word. That's the word problem. The word puzzle. Mythological hero Achilles. And this guy gets every single letter right. But here, listen to what happens after he gets all the letters correct. Here we go. It's coming up. All right. Hang on. I got to turn the sound back on.
Yeah, 4 L's. Pick it up.
All right. There's 5 letters left.
Y.
There's a Y. 500.
G.
1 G.
2 letters left.
700.
C.
Yeah, there are 2 C's.
2 C's. He's got every single letter.
Okay.
I saw.
Oh, that'd be a good idea. Yeah.
Mythological hero Achilles.
Achilles.
Okay. Shelby.
I'm going to play that again for you.
Achilles.
Hang on. Let me back it up.
I saw.
Oh, that'd be a good idea. Yeah.
Mythological hero Achilles.
Can't accept that.
Okay.
Shelby.
I'll solve.
Yeah.
Mythological hero Achilles.
Pronunciation counts.
Yes, because he said,
And I
I'm sorry.
believe in Jeopardy spelling counts.
Yeah, he said, no, by the way, there were no missing letters. It was all spelled out. He said, Achilles. And then you heard the buzzer. Well, I'm sorry, we can't accept that because you have to pronounce it correctly. So because this guy never, but even if you didn't read the Iliad, certainly you would read about people having Achilles tendons. The guy ruptured his Achilles tendon. He had Achilles surgery, or that was his Achilles heel. Can you imagine? Because you didn't know, you never read anything about Achilles. You called it Achilles. It cost that poor guy $1 million. So I may include that in the if you can maybe post that on the website. You think people might want to watch that?
Yeah, I'll see what I can do and get that clip for you.
All right, let's see where we left off. All right. Oh, here's one. A woman sent out a tweet. She was looking at this container of yogurt, and this particular company lists the names of the cows who help make the yogurt. And the cows' names are Myrtle, Letty, Irma, Fanny, Julia, Veronica, Lucy. And here was her, and this, I guess, a feminist, and here was her tweet. She included a picture of the yogurt container that listed the cows' names. And here was her tweet. Notice how they named all the cows traditionally girl names. There is a deep connection between misogyny and consuming animals. To which somebody else replied to her tweet, I feel like yogurt made from bulls wouldn't taste quite right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Somebody's offended because the farmer named his dairy cows women after girls' names. Oh, goodness. Right, you want to talk about not being able to turn off 7,000 lights in your school for almost 2 years?
Yeah, who's paying that electric bill?
Well, the school district is. So about
Which
2 years
in turn is really the taxpayers, right?
the taxpayers, right? So this is what happens when you turn over control of your life to artificial intelligence and automation. About almost 2 years ago, a school in Massachusetts paid a lot of money to have one of these building automations supposed to control the lights, the doors, the air conditioning, the heating. Well, shortly after the system was installed, one of the smart processors that's supposed to turn the lights on and off failed. And this was back during when we had the supply chain. Remember all the ships, docked offshore and anchored offshore. And anyway, so the company that had installed it said, "Look, we can't get a replacement part." And the system said the default, if anything fails, the default is going to be leave the lights on, not turn the lights off, which isn't, if you're going to have a default mode, that's probably the right default mode. But for a year and a half, they weren't able to get the replacement processor. And then the company that did the original installation went out of business. So the lighting system installed at the Minnechaug Regional High School, which is over a decade old, was intended to save money. But ever since the software failed on August of 2021, the lights in the Springfield suburb school, it's a suburb of Springfield, Mass, have been on continuously, costing taxpayers a small fortune. So how's that for the
There's no way to override that.
no way to override it. What they've been doing is like turning off circuit breakers and whatnot. Like, if they've got like the auditorium, they'll throw the circuit breakers. But sometimes when you throw the circuit breakers, you also turn off other things like the wall sockets. So, but no, they've had 7,000 lights burning for almost 2 years because their automation system failed and they haven't been able to get the part to replace it. Anyway, by the way, let's talk about health and vitamins from in our health segment. Recent study that the vast majority of the people in the United States aren't getting enough vitamin E. And do you know what one of the primary sources of vitamin D is?
D, milk, and salmon.
D. Well, no, actually, vitamin D actually from the sun.
Yes, the sun is the part. Yeah.
But let's talk about E. So 90% of US adults don't contain adequate amounts of vitamin E. And so what's vitamin E's major function? Well, it's an antioxidant. It quietly protects our cells from the oxidative damage caused by chemicals that are formed naturally when we convert food to energy. The consequences of oxidative damage, which if left unchecked by vitamin E, include accelerated aging, deterioration of vision, and high risk of diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. One quote from one of the researchers said, "Vitamin E is kind of like having a fire department." She's from the Oregon State Linus Pauling Institute. You only need it if your house is on fire. It's also very important during pregnancy, and I won't go down the long list of things having to do with the development of babies' nervous systems, brain and spinal cords. But the point is, almost none of us are getting the proper levels of vitamin D's. Now, where is it found? Well, it's found naturally in nuts, seeds, and plant-based oils like canola oils and olive oil, as well as dark greens, like think spinach and broccoli. Almonds, sunflower seeds, kale, which I'm not a big fan, spinach. And then we get to vitamin D. And again, in the summertime, most of us get enough vitamin D because hopefully we're spending time out in the sunlight. But in the wintertime, when daylight hours are short and we tend not to go out as much because of the cold, cloudy weather, kind of similar things. It's helpful in staving off dementia, treating depression. By the way, do you ever hear of seasonal affective disorder?
Yep.
By the way, Vermont and Maine have some of the highest suicide rates in the country. And if you look at the graphs of when people commit suicide in those two states, it spikes in the wintertime because they tend not to see the sun. So
I actually heard that of Alaska, which makes sense.
Yes, the same thing in Alaska. So the point is, most of us are not getting enough vitamin E and not vitamin D. And if you're not taking a multivitamin every day, you should. Do you take a multivitamin?
I do.
Do you ever read what's on the label?
No, I don't. I just buy it,
All right.
buy
Well,
the multivitamin. And
oh, I'll tell you a little story about vitamin. I donate blood about every 10 weeks. And one of the first things they do before you give blood is that they prick your finger and they check your hemoglobin level. Because if your hemoglobin is too low, you don't have enough red blood cells, they won't take your blood. And normally I was right up in the middle or high middle of the acceptable range. And I went a couple of months ago and they did the thing and I was, scraping I was just barely over the minimum. And I couldn't figure out why I had such a precipitous drop. But anyway, I went home and I checked and I had, my wife had bought me a new bottle of vitamins. And I looked at the new bottle of vitamins and I knew my old vitamins had, iron in them. And I looked at the new bottle of vitamins and there was no iron on the list of ingredients. So I went and bought a different bottle of vitamins that had iron. And 10 weeks later, when I went to give blood a second time, my hemoglobin was right up where it was supposed to be because, iron deficiency obviously causes low hemoglobin. And some of the downside of red blood cells carry oxygen to your brain into your muscles. So if you have an iron deficiency, that means you have a red blood cell deficiency, which means that I noticed, by the way, that one of the other side effects when I worked out, shortly after switching vitamins, I noticed I was not getting the endurance I had. I do a pretty stiff workout on a exercise bike, and I noticed I was struggling to finish my normal workout. And it turned out that because my hemoglobin was low, my blood wasn't carrying the oxygen to my muscles, and I was struggling because my muscles were getting very sore near the end of the workout. Once I went back on a vitamin with the recommended amount of iron, went back, and within a few days, I was having no trouble finishing my workout. So in addition to just buying your vitamins, Producer Sue, I would say read the label, make sure they got
I'll have to do
vitamin
that.
D, vitamin E, and iron. All right. Any thoughts or questions on vitamins?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought to look at the label. I just always buy whatever multivitamins on sale that month that I buy it.
No. And by the way, women should have high calcium. Men should not go for. By the way, one of the big differences between men and women is that women need more calcium. I don't know if I mentioned, but a couple of months ago, I had a kidney stone, and when you take too much calcium, you can get a kidney stone, which is, trust me, very, very painful. So men should take vitamins made for men. Women should take vitamins made for women. But if you're a guy taking your wife's vitamins, you're setting yourself up for kidney stone because it's got excess calcium. Anyway, let's move on. Did you ever see the movie Casablanca?
Oh, I did, but it's been many, many years.
Well, there's a scene near the end of the movie where the Inspector Renault, and remember Humphrey Bogart plays the nightclub owner Rick, and he pretends to just learn about that there was gambling going on in a nightclub, and he says to Rick, "Gambling? I was shocked, I tell you, shocked." And of course, he knew it all along. Anyway, so I read this story about corruption in the New York City construction industry. And having worked in New York City, I was shocked, I tell you. Here's the story. Here's this a quote from the Link story. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office and the New York City Department of Investigation charged 50 defendants in a kickback scheme to steal money from at least 7 developers on construction projects in the city. And they list all these different big famous buildings. These are big buildings. These are not tiny little buildings. The scheme was allegedly orchestrated by a Robert Basleys, an executive at the firm at the construction management company, who was accused of manipulating the competitive bidding process for subcontractors. According to court records, Basleys steered more than 100 million in trade subcontracts and change orders, often at grossly inflated prices, to co-conspirator subcontractors in exchange for kickback payments. The subcontractors paid more than 4.2 million to Basleys and more than 2.8 million to entities controlled by his associates. And then they give a list of his other associates. By the way, all of his associates' names all end in vowels. So, and if you're a big fan of the what was the name of this HBO show with the mafia?
Sopranos.
Sopranos. All of these guys there, all of their names end in vowels. Asuto, Noto, Basilis, Camuso. So they were all indicted. By the way, how much time we have?
You have about 10 minutes.
All right. So just a personal note. I used to work in New York City. I'm going back 40 years. And when I first became involved, I would go to, I was involved in with Carrier Air Conditioning, and we used to do air conditioning maintenance on very large high-rise office buildings. And in New York City, if a building was trying to hire a building engineer, he really didn't care about the salary. His question was, who does the purchasing? Because if the answer was you do, he didn't care about the salary. And I remember sitting in a guy's office, and he said, well, if you want the maintenance contract for my air conditioning system, he said, all you need to do is add 5,000 and you're going to kick that back to me. Now, they didn't always necessarily want it in cash. Sometimes they said, you're going to pay for this cruise. You're going to give me first class tickets for my wife and I to Las Vegas or whatever. But they would just come right out and tell you, you want this contract, you need to tack on $5,000. And of course, we wouldn't play that game. So there were a lot of maintenance contracts and big fancy buildings that you would recognize that we would never get, because as part of a Fortune 50 company, we couldn't be involved in kickbacks. But it was standard operating practice for building engineers back then to just demand kickbacks from not just the HVAC guy, but the guy who did the cleaning, the guy who did the window washing, the guy who shoveled the snow. It was, I mean, these building engineers, they were driving Mercedes, they were taking cruises. Trust me, it has never changed. Corruption in New York City. Shocked, right? Shocked, I say. All right.
And that alert you just heard, by the way, it was Alexa telling me we're about to get a major snowstorm.
Okay. By the way, you don't need to do it now, but anybody listening, if you haven't heard the term traffic violence, Google the phrase traffic violence. And what you're going to find is in cities all across the United States, activists who are calling for less private car ownership, safer streets, more streets being closed to traffic, have come up with this new emotional catchphrase, traffic violence, in an effort, and they did it in an effort to drum up political and public support. They now refer to run-of-the-mill unintentional traffic accidents as traffic violence and insist that our political leaders take action to, quote, end traffic violence. Now, and what was one of the precursors to the use of the word violence in other scenarios where they were not intentional criminal acts? Well, the precursor to that use of the word violence for accidents or unintentional crimes was anti-gun activists who began referring to all gun-related deaths as acts of gun violence, even though 2/3 of all gun deaths in this country are suicides. Now, if you're going to classify a suicide by gunshot as, quote, an act of gun violence, which they do day in and day out, shouldn't suicide by hanging be classified as an act of rope violence, or suicide by intentional drug overdose as an act of pill violence?
According to their logic.
Yeah. How about somebody who died from cutting their own wrist? Shouldn't they be categorized as someone who died from an act of razor blade violence? Can you see how ridiculous that is?
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, words have meaning, and they can be powerful emotional triggers. So be wary when you hear somebody attaching the word violence to something they want changed, because as I just pointed out, an unintentional traffic accident, in my opinion, is not an act of traffic violence. So violence, I believe, implies intentional damage, or intentional damage.
Malicious intent.
Malicious intent. Thank you very much, producer Susan. All right. Don't know if you noticed, but people in France are rioting all over the streets in different cities. Literally millions of residents are rioting. Have you heard about the riots?
No, I haven't heard that.
Well, if you Google riots in France, what they're writing about is the plan by the government to raise the age to begin collecting full government funded pension benefits, which, by the way, equal 50% of average salary from age 62 to age 64. Now, I believe a couple of weeks ago, didn't we talk about why our Social Security system is failing?
Yeah, the United States is in big trouble if we don't make some changes.
Right. And currently, you can begin collecting partial benefits at 62, but you don't get to collect full benefits until you're age 67. And when you do, your full benefits, by the way, are not half your salary. They're about 33% of your salary. So why is France in trouble? Because they elected all these politicians who kept promising this. Oh, my goodness. You got company?
It's probably a deer in the backyard.
Right. So by the way, so over the past decade, the citizens of France have elected politicians who said, hey, we're going to give you a 35-hour work week. Hey, we're going to give you a pension fund, a pension that will allow you to collect half your salary as age 62. Now, here's why they're so. First of all, those are incredibly generous benefits. Full 50% pension at age 62, and you only have to work a 35-hour week. Now, U.S. life expectancy is currently 76.4 years, while the French life expectancy is 82.2 years. And as I already mentioned, our standard work week is 40 and theirs is 35. So why is the French government saying they can't afford to continue paying those benefits and they need to raise the retirement age? Well, it's simple. In France, if you were making $70,000 per year and retired at age 62 and lived to age 82, which is 20 years, collecting 50% of your $70,000 annual salary, measured in 2022 dollars, you would receive $700,000 in pension benefits over your 20-year retirement life. In the US, if you retired at age 67 and you lived to age 76, which is only 9.4 years and you get 34% of your $70,000, your lifetime benefits would be $225,000. So in France, it'd be $700,000. In the US, it'd be $225,000. So why not just raise the taxes in France to pay for those generous benefits? Well, because the effective tax rate is already 50% higher than the US. And I did a whole bunch of calculations allowing for what, of course, you do get free medical expense. You do get free medical coverage. But the point is, even there's something called the tax capacity. If you're familiar with the Laffer curve, there comes a point where as you increase rates, you actually get less tax revenues. So France is already at or above their optimum tax capacity, and they really can't raise any more tax revenues. So here's what's happened over the past 20 years. These politicians have made all these promises. Vote for me, we'll give you this, and now they suddenly figured out we can't pay for it. So once you've given something to somebody like you, yes, you can retire at 62, and now you want to say, sorry about that. Yeah, we know you. We told you we can retire at 62, but we can't do that for you. They're understandably angry, but that's the predictable outcome when you make promises you can't keep, and that's why people in France are rioting, because they want to take away this 50% pension at age 62. But quite frankly, I don't see what options they have, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But that's the crisis they've made for themselves.
Sounds like France is in worse shape than the United States.
Yeah, because our Social Security, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, if we took some minor tweaks to Social Security now, they would be relatively tiny. One of which would do away with, raise the age for early retirement from 62 to 63 and raise the 7.5% to 8%. And, those would be tiny adjustments, and the system would be good for another 30 years. But the longer you kick the can down the road, the worse and worse it gets. The issue is that France has started kicking their can down the road long before we did. And now that can is up against the wall and there's nowhere else to kick it. So what you're seeing in France now is a precursor of what you can expect to see in the United States in a couple of years if we don't do something about our Social Security system sooner rather than later. Any thoughts on what's...
Yeah, I think we need to look at what's happening in France and make our adjustments now before we end up in their position.
That's what a logical person would do. But unfortunately, politicians, even though they know what they have to do, nobody will do it because they want to get reelected. And the first person says, hey, we need to raise the minimum retirement age from 62 to 63. He knows that his opponent in the next election will use that against him. All right, we're going to talk about taxpayer relief shots. And for those who may not have heard it, we call them taxpayer relief shots because when a good guy or a good woman with a gun shoots and kills a thug, It saves the taxpayers the cost of a jury trial, court-appointed attorney. It costs $80,000 a year to keep somebody in jail. If he comes out of jail on probation, then you got probation expenses. So, and there's a sheriff down in Santa Rosa County who can explain it better than I did. Here's what the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, thinks about why you should shoot thugs who try to rob you.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
All right, and coincidentally, there's another sheriff down in Florida. His name is Sheriff Grady Judge, and here's how Sheriff Grady Judge thinks about that.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
All right, so you got two Florida sheriffs saying, hey, we prefer that you shoot the bad guys because you're going to save the taxpayers money. All right, this one comes to us from Indianapolis, where at 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody breaks into this guy's house, and as you hear him talk, you're going to hear him say that this is not the first time, and I may have to reset this. It looks like my thing ran ahead on me. I'm going to have to kind of tap dance here. You know what the phrase for when somebody on TV or radio tap dances and kind of kill time, what that's called?
I can't think of that off the top of my head.
It's called vamping. Here we go. Hang on. I got an advertisement coming up here. Got to wait for the ad to stop.
So how much snow are you expecting to get in Jersey?
Oh, we might get a trace. Hang on. I got about three seconds to go. Here we go. There we go.
Deadly on Indy's near northwest side after police say a homeowner killed an intruder identified as 64-year-old Steve Shepard Jr. early this morning.
That's right. Fox 59's Jerzee Wells spoke with that homeowner today who tried to explain exactly what happened there. Jesse?
The sidewalk outside this home is still littered with broken glass after the homeowner tells me the man he killed broke in through this side window, and police reports show this is not the first time that same homeowner has had to use force to protect his property. Just after 4 in the morning, a man who lives here on 34th Street says he heard someone breaking into his home, so he came downstairs to confront the intruder.
He took a video game and threw it at me. Then after that, shots rang out.
Howard Murphy admits he pulled the trigger, hitting the stranger who was holding a knife. That person then ran upstairs and died in the bedroom.
So by the way, 4 o'clock in the morning, there's a guy in your house holding a knife. Are you justified in shooting him?
Absolutely.
All right, let's keep going.
Honestly, didn't even know if he got shot or not because he was still moving around, running around.
Unfortunately, the violence is nothing new to Howard. In November 2014, police were called to the same address after an intruder kicked in Howard's door.
He took a gamble, not thinking I wasn't there, and I happened to be there.
Speaking 8 years ago, Howard described shooting that suspect in the leg. The wounded crook ran away before being caught and eventually convicted of breaking into Howard's home.
He reached for something. I don't know if it was like a sledgehammer, but he reached for something, and he was getting ready to strike me, and then that's when shots was fired.
Howard was cleared of any wrongdoing in 2014.
I don't go out here looking for no trouble. I mind my own business.
After cooperating with police and being released from custody following the overnight killing, Howard hopes the shooting serves as a lesson to any other would-be thieves.
I don't want to be like that, but just like the average worker, I work hard for what I got. And if you're gonna come here and take it from me, there's plenty of spots over at Crown Hill.
Finally, Howard tells me his home was broken into earlier this week and thousands of dollars in electronics and cash were stolen, although he's not sure if the man he killed overnight was involved in the previous break-in. Jerzee Wells, Fox 59 News.
Metro.
So what do you think? Justified?
Absolutely. And it sounds like he needs to move to a different neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, three times. I mean, so 4 years ago, and then the week before, and then this time. So, but certainly, again at 4 in the morning, the old saying, "When seconds count, the police are minutes away." And we've heard other people on the phone with 911 saying, send the cops," and the dispatchers on, "Well, the cops are on the way, ma'am. Hold on, because there's someplace you can go and hide." Remember some of those ones we've done?
Yeah.
where the dispatcher is suggesting that the woman hides in the bathroom while somebody's breaking in her house. All right. Well, I guess we're just about out of time as usual, huh?
Yeah, and as you heard, that dog barking, he was 2 rooms away barking at the deer in the backyard. He protects me from deer in the backyard and burglars in the front door.
Right. Well, all right. Anyway, I want to thank all of you who listen to the podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. Hope you found it as interesting as I did. Producer Sue's going to try to get some of the links up on the web page. If you want to, and then, by the way, that website is jerzeejoe.com, and Jerzee spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com, which is the website. And if you want to send me an email with questions, comments, or suggested show topic, you can do that just by sending me an email to just joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember Jerzee with an R and a Z. And other than that, I've got nothing else to add. Producer Sue, how about yourself?
No, I'm going to enjoy my snow day tomorrow.
All right, you getting off from work?
Most likely. They haven't made the call yet, but it's looking that way.
How many inches are you supposed to get?
They said 6.
They said 6. All right, well.
So we'll see.
We might get a dusting. All right, well, with that, I'll talk to you next week.
All right.
All right, take care, producer.
Bye.